Well, hi, everyone. Welcome back to Master Books Recipe for Homeschool Success. This summit is going so well, and now I am going to be talking or actually introducing you to Marilyn Boyer. She has been an author with Master Books for quite a long time and has written some amazing American history curriculum as well as character studies. And her latest series is What a Character, and it is so popular. People love it. Adults love it. It's short biographies in different categories of people in history that have done extraordinary things. It's called What a Character, Notable Lives in History. So she'll be telling you about that as well. But what we want to do is just give you an overview of the curriculum that she's written, who it's for, how it's different from each other, as well as how What a Character, those books fit into it. So we've got a lot to offer you in the way of American history, and I'm excited for you to get to know Marilyn. I'm going to take myself off the screen. She's going to do the talking, and I'll see you back at the end of it. Thank you, Marilyn.
You're welcome. Good to be with you. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be with you today. And I thought what I would do is just go through the books that I've written for Master Books and tell you what is included in them. And then I'm going to share with you what customers say about them. Instead of me telling you all the features that are in them, I thought I would let you see what other customers have to say, people that have used them. And even I have some testimonials from kids saying what they have liked about them. So the first one I wrote for Master Books is For You They Signed. And this is the spiritual heritage of those who shaped our nation. It's all about the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. And I was amazed. I was challenged to write this book when I heard a presentation. And the man that gave the presentation asked he showed a picture of the signing of the Declaration. And he said, how many of you know any of these people? I knew Thomas Jefferson and I knew Benjamin Franklin, but that was all. And then he started to tell some of their stories. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. We don't know these people anymore. We've forgotten them, and they sacrificed so much so that we could live in a land that's free. So I started researching. I got books that were written in the 1800s where people had actually interviewed the actual signers or their family members. And what I found was amazing. You know, we hear today that our founders were deists or atheists, and that is so not true. And, you know, they were prolific writers, and so many of them in their last will and testament wrote what they believed about Jesus Christ. So we don't have to guess. You know, we can go right to the source and find out what they said. So this book is huge. Master Books has just redesigned it. So it's an all-in-one curriculum. The words have not changed from the original book, but they have added tremendous graphics. They've added pictures of the signers' wives, pictures of their homes, maps. It's all full color, and the quizzes come right in the book where you would give them. Instead of having a parent guide, everything is included in this curriculum in this one book. And it's huge. It's like 555 pages, but it's not overwhelming. As our customers say, it's broken down into small bite-sized pieces that are fascinating, that keep kids involved. This book is actually written for 7th through 9th grade, and it tells about the Christian heritage. It tells about their sacrifice, and I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of the sacrifice so you know what you'd be getting in this book. Abraham Clark was from New Jersey. He was one of the signers, and his 2 sons were in the Continental Army. Well, the British found out that they were his sons, so they captured them, and they held them in the British prison ship, the Jersey. We actually lost more guys because of the treatment they received on that prison ship. So one of his sons was kept in solitary confinement, and he almost died from starvation. The only reason he stayed alive was because fellow prisoners would push little breadcrumbs through the keyhole. Back then they had those big keyholes, and they would push crumbs of bread through there. And that's the only way he kept from starving. He was released during the revolution. He was released on prisoner exchange. He was emaciated, but he did live. But the British had said to Abraham Clark, if you will relinquish your signature to the Declaration, you can have your son back. He would not do it because he cared more about the freedom of our nation, or, build this nation, than relinquishing that signature. Another one, just briefly, Francis Lewis of New York, the British burned his home, seized his aging wife, and held her in a prison with no bed and no change of clothes. She was finally released 2 years later, but her health was gone and she died shortly thereafter. Now there's 56 of these guys. Some suffered more than others, but all of them knew when they put that signature on the Declaration that there was a target on their back, and they were sacrificing possibly their lives and their sacred honor, their freedom. So this book will tell you all about them. It will arm your kids with true information that they can share in the public square. Also, I just wanted to briefly tell you what one of them said about Jesus Christ. Wherever I could find it, I recorded in the book what they believed about Jesus Christ. So as I read this, you think, does this sound like a deist or an atheist? This is Roger Sherman. He said, I believe there's one living and true God existing in three persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and that at the end of the world, there will be a resurrection from the dead and a final judgment of all mankind, when the righteous shall be publicly acquitted before Christ the judge and be admitted to everlasting life and glory, and the wicked shall be sentenced to everlasting punishment. That pretty much covers it. And all throughout that book, I give their testimonies of faith in Jesus Christ. It is amazing. It was like uncovering treasure when I wrote that book. So you will be inspired, your kids will be inspired by the character, the faith, and the courage of these signers. We point out their character as we go through the book. All of our materials are historically accurate, but they also focus on the character involved in these people. Now, let me just say, nobody was perfect. No person is perfect. We're all sinners. So some of the people in our books did some stuff that was wrong, but basically they tried to honor God and do what was right. And we will point that out. We'll point out their faith and their courage. So it's for grades 7 through 9, but some of our customers are saying it is great for family studies. We've had customers that say we read it together and then we discuss the questions provided at the end of each chapter. Some use it for studies for the individual student, or even parents have been reading it. We hear that the format, their customers are finding it's easy to use, not overwhelming. Another mom said, I'm excited that it builds character in my student and not just teaches history. Another mom says, we adapted this book to a group setting. I have ages 10, 13, and 15. The kids take turns reading the text aloud, and then we answer the questions out loud as a group. So as you can see, you can take our materials and use them in a way that best suits your situation. Another one said, I've always believed that one of the most important things is knowing and understanding what the foundation of this country was built upon. This course is an absolute must for students looking to further their understanding of the Christian roots of American history and to learn with what standing strong for God really means, as you see what these guys suffered and how they stood strong. Another customer said it's history that builds character. It tells life-changing stories, and it gives us a glimpse into the lives and sacrifices of these men. Another one said the author does a fantastic job of shedding light on the impact of signing the Declaration of Independence, the impact that it had on the families of these men. It's amazing to see the role their faith played in shaping our nation. One family says they use this as a follow-up to civics and the Constitution. And the last one for this book that I'll share with you today, this curriculum is typical of other master books courses in that it is beautifully designed to be engaging, faith building, and easy to use with a ready-made schedule. Okay, next book that we did for Master Books is The Fight for Freedom. My husband and I wrote this one together. This is a collection of real-life stories of the men and women who helped to forge and establish our nation. You know, it's been proved that kids remember best when history is told in story format. And we got a bunch of public school textbooks that were written in the 1800s. And we had a number of them. And it's amazing. We found the stories that we tell in this book were in every one of those public school textbooks, the books that our great grandparents read and studied, and they knew all these stories that we've forgotten today. So we've collected them, and we're telling these stories again so that your kids will know them. So they will be inspired by them too. Let me just say that this is written for ages 4th through 6th grade if it's used as curriculum, but the stories are appreciated by young and old alike. There's people that you will know, like George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, but there's some that you may not know, like Mad Anthony Wayne or Caesar Rodney or Daniel Morgan, Daniel Boone, Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, John Hancock, John Hart, Lydia Darrah. We've got men and women in this book. Patrick Henry, Israel Putnam. It's amazing. So the kids are learning history, but they're learning it in story form. We tell about, let me see how many of the men are in here. There's 34 men and women that we tell about in this volume. And you hear their life story. You hear what they did and how they felt. You learn about their lives, what they experienced. You know, if you read a normal history book that it has maybe one chapter about the War of Independence, you can't begin to understand what it was really like until you start delving into the lives of these men. And we are hearing from customers that they are using this book along with Masterbooks America's storybooks to give more information about the people involved. They're using it as a supplement. Some are using it just as a curriculum on its own, but some are using it to supplement America's story to give more information about these people. So customers are saying it's captivating stories and colorful pictures. She says, my 12-year-old read it in less than 3 months and loved it. Let me just say, some people are using it as a curriculum. Some people are just using it as a book for their kids to read. It's working both ways. Another customer said, my middle school child loves reading this on her own. Another one, ever since we got this book, my 10-year-old son will not put it down. I have an 8-year-old son who is often bored by history, but he absolutely loves these books. We're using it as a family read aloud with America's story. It goes into more detail about the people covered. My son loves all the beautiful pictures. Another mom says, I read it to my younger children. The older children read it by themselves. Another one says, my daughter is a little history buff. We are reading this along with America's story. Her daughter is a 3rd grader. As I say, all ages are enjoying the stories in these books. I mean, who doesn't love a good story? You know, the stories are remembered. It's not just a bunch of facts and dates. It's stories of real people, what they went through, their experiences, and kids remember it. Another mom says it's more like a living book than a textbook. It's a must-have in your homeschool library. It's beautiful, true, has a biblical worldview of the American War of Independence in the form of biographies. This has been the best addition to America's story. We love going through the stories in this book. They seem like they would be so insignificant, but these people, most names I've never heard of before, have changed history in fascinating ways. I purchased this without the teacher's guide because I intended for my son to just read through the book. He loved, all caps, the book. He really enjoyed learning about different people and how they were Christian. It's told in a non-textbook form, and it's more like a living book. Thank you. Another family says we're using it as a read aloud at night just for fun. My 4th grade son is completing a week's worth of lessons pretty much every day. He told me, I don't want to slow down, but I don't want to get to the end either. I wish the book were this thick. He held his hands a couple of feet above the table in demonstration. I love having quality material that my children look forward to learning from. So that's what you'll get in the Fight for Freedom. Now, the second one we did that's in that series is America's Struggle to Become a Nation. This goes from the Revolutionary War through the ratification of the Constitution. It's told in story fashion again, and it points out so many providential occurrences that happened in behalf of the colonists. They're amazing. We do little call outs and we tell these stories about the providential happenings. So some people have said, why did you write 2 books about the founding era? And I tell you why, because it is the most important for your kids to learn about. The founding era is when our country was developed, when scriptural principles became engrafted in the Constitution. This book in particular, it gives a little caveat about each one of the signers of the Declaration. So your younger kids can find out who they were and what they did for our freedom. Here's one of the stories, story time. Then we also do the same for the signers of the Constitution, so the kids can learn who they were. We have a section with the Constitution and the Declaration and the Bill of Rights, and it explains it to kids so they know what it means and why it was written and why it's important today. And we do need to know that today. Do you know that there are some lawmakers in our country who've never read the Constitution? That's crazy. You know, it's the law that governs our land. Our kids need to know what it says. But this is done in story format. It's color, full color book. And your kids are going to learn so much about the battles. This one kind of talks about what happened during the War of Independence. There are 34 chapters. Says why a War of Independence, trouble over taxes, the first battles, the choice of a leader, battles in various places, a turning point in the war in the South, Cornwallis is trapped. Then it tells about the United States Constitution, the new republic. It's chock full of information. So I'm going to tell you what some of our customers said about this. My daughter does not like history and has always complained during history every year. My jaw fell on the floor when she said, I love this history book. It's so interesting. And I like all the pictures. This is actually a good history course. This book is fun and engaging and is fun to read to my children. We spend a lot of time reading our history from Master Books. This book is a gem. When my 10-year-old son said he wanted to read about the Revolutionary War, we looked at different books, and this was his choice, hands down. It's biblical, colorful, interesting. I did not have to ask him to read it. As a matter of fact, I had to ask him to put it down so that we could get some other schoolwork done. My 6-year-old and I read it as a read aloud. This book is a must-have in your homeschool library. It's simple to use. It's organized well. Storytime with Uncle Rick is a fantastic addition. This history book makes homeschool easy because my 5th grader can follow the lesson plans and work independently. All I need to do is grade his worksheet and project at the end of the week. There are about 10 pages per chapter, so it's easy to read in a 4 or 5 day school week. One of our favorite parts of this book is that each chapter includes a couple projects to complete. For example, memory work selections like learning the Pledge of Allegiance, journal entries, designing posters, writing newspaper articles, building a fort, and research opportunities. This book is very engaging and informative. My children have learned to love history by reading this book. Okay, then Jennifer told us about the new series that I'm writing. And actually, all the writing work is done. They're all There's 6 of them in print and 4 more will be released very shortly. I think there'll be a couple more within the month that will be released. Let me tell you a little bit about, it's a set of 10 readers designed to be fun and engaging for students. There's a fascinating focus on important, influential, and visionary people, as well as heroic animal stories. I'll tell you about that in a minute. The stories are patriotic. They're stories that you can trust. Okay, the first one I wrote was America's War Heroes. There are 10 stories in each book. This has Ethan Allen and his Green Mountain Boys, Daniel Morgan and his Sharpshooters, Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, one of my favorite characters, John Paul Jones, I Have Not Yet Begun to Fight, Stephen Decatur and the Pirates, David Farragut, the Boy at Sea, Mosby, the Gray Ghost of the Confederacy. And let me just say, these cover different time periods, so they do work very well with your American storybooks. For instance, the first 4 stories are under the American War of Independence. Then we've got 2 in the War of 1812. Mosby, the Gray Ghost of the Confederacy, is from the Civil War. World War I, we have Sergeant York, unlikely hero. His story is amazing. World War II, we have Jake DeShazer, From Prisoner to Preacher. That story you are not going to want to miss. We point out character. This Jake DeShazer is the most wonderful example of forgiveness I think that I have ever heard. And we point out that to the kids. They're all character-based. We point out the character displayed by these people. It's one thing to teach your kids character, but it's another thing to show them character in action. And that is what I have attempted to do. Just let me tell you briefly about Jake DeShazer. He was one of the Doolittle Raiders in World War II. His mission was to bomb Japan, and then he was to get to China occupied territory. Well, he ran out of gas. His plane crashed. He was captured by the Japanese. He was held in prison for 3.5 years, treated very badly. Toward the end of that time, one of the prison guards gave the men 4 books. One of them was the Bible. Jake read through the Bible. He became a Christian there in his prison cell. He hated the Japanese. He went into that war hating them, but he became a Christian in his cell. He began to develop a love for the Japanese. Even the prison guard noticed a change in his character. World War II got over. He came back to the States. He went to Bible college. He went back and he preached to the very guards that tortured him. As a matter of fact, he became a missionary to Japan. He wrote a tract called I Was a Prisoner of the Japanese. Mitsuo Fuchito, the man who led the raid on Pearl Harbor, got a hold of that tract. He sought out Jake DeShazer. He became a Christian. And Jake and Mitsuo went around the country of Japan sharing the gospel together. Thousands of Japanese people were saved, thousands, because one man chose to practice forgiveness. It's amazing. It just sends tingles up my spine. That's the kind of stories that we have in this book, stories that your kids are going to remember. They will never forget that. And if they're struggling to forgive their brother who just knocked over their Legos, you can point out to them, remember about Jake DeShazer. Remember what he forgave and how God used that forgiveness to bring about the salvation of thousands of people. The choices we make in everyday life matter. And that's one thing we are trying to do to inspire kids. The choices you make matter. God will use them for his benefit when you choose to act rightly. Desmond Doss, the unarmed hero, that is amazing. He rescued many men single-handedly in World War II. At the end of each of these books, we have a section of corresponding curriculum, and it points out for each one of these stories which of Masterbooks curriculum it coordinates with. So it makes it very easy for you to use Masterbooks curriculum, even the language arts, the science, it tells you which ones they're coordinated with. And let me just point out, the stories are wonderfully illustrated. Masterbooks has done an amazing job with the illustrations, pictures that kids are interested in and engaged in. Okay. The next one in this series is Inventors and Scientists. And you know what I found? I tried to choose the inventors and the scientists that were Christians. And so many of the inventors and scientists were Christian men. And God blessed them and gave them wisdom. It's just amazing to find that out. We did Carl Linnaeus, the boy who loved plants. Eli Whitney, creative inventor. Robert Fulton, Samuel F.B. Morse, Louis Pasteur, Alexander Graham Bell, Thomas Edison, the strange boy the world needed. Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, and the Wright brothers are all in this book. And I'm going to share with you what some of our customers say in a minute. The next one is Extraordinary Animal Heroes. And this was one of the most fun ones for me to write. They were all fun. I loved doing the research. I loved pulling out the Christian emphasis and the character in all these men and women. But this was amazing. These are animals that helped in war efforts in tremendous ways. We hear about in World War I, Murphy the donkey who carried the wounded, Sergeant Stubby, the dog who caught a German spy, Sharamee, the pigeon who saved the lost battalion and is now stuffed and in the Smithsonian Institute. You can go see her. Then there's the Alaskan Black Death, Balto, the dog who saved Nome. World War II, Tipperary Beauty, the dog who rescued pets. After the bombing of Britain, she would investigate the rubble, sniff in the rubble, and find pets that were trapped beneath the rubble, but living. And she would not stop until those pets were rescued. Amazing story. She even found a goldfish who was floating around in its bowl, unharmed, but it was buried in the rubble. Judy, the dog who became a prisoner, and she actually went and got food for the men because they weren't fed very much in the Japanese prison camp. Chips, the dog who disabled a German machine gun nest. Yes. Smokey, the dog who strung telephone wires and saved lives. Wojtek, the bear who went to war. That is an amazing story. The bear actually was adopted by the soldiers. Here's Wojtek. And he was tame. He lived with the soldiers. And when they went to the battlefront, he imitated them. And he saw them carrying chests of ammo to the front line. He went up and put his arms out. They put the ammo in his hands. And for the rest of that battle, he carried ammo to the front lines and stacked it. And then he'd go back down the mountain for more. There's so much I could tell you about him. There's amazing, amazing stories about Wojtek. You will want to read that for sure. And the last one in this book is Sergeant Reckless. He was in the Korean War. He was the horse who carried ammo and the wounded. He would carry ammo up the mountain. They would load wounded men on him and he'd carry them down the mountain. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Then America's Famous Spies. And this was maybe my next favorite one to write. It's just, we tell you all about George Washington's spy ring that was so intricate. The lady, Anna Strong, who hung laundry on her clothesline to alert other spies where the British were, what inlet. If the British were in a certain inlet in the Sound, they had all the inlets numbered. So if they were in inlet 3, she would hang a red petticoat on the line and 3 white handkerchiefs to show that she was in inlet 3. If a message was needing to be taken to General Washington, she would hang a black petticoat on the line and also however many handkerchiefs to show where the man was waiting to deliver the message to Washington. And that is like skimming the surface. It was a very intricate spy ring that he had. George Washington didn't even know who the members of the spy ring were. He knew Benjamin Talmadge, who was the man that would deliver the messages to him. But it was in Long Island, New York, and a lot of the spies were actually friends of each other that had grown up together, gone to school together. But they didn't know what each other's jobs were. In case anyone got caught, they didn't want them to know who the other spies were. And so interesting, it wasn't found till years later in an attic, a listing of who the spies were and what they did. But it's incredible. So we tell about Nathan Hale, Lydia Dara. She's got amazing stories. Washington Spies, The Culper Ring, Anna Strong, The Petticoat Spy, James Armistead Lafayette. He was a Black man who was a double spy. His story is amazing. In the Civil War, we have Belle Boyd, a teenage spy. And Emma Edmonds, she was a nurse and spy. Dabney and Lucy Walker, the clothesline spies. They were a Black couple who went on the Underground Railroad, escaped the South, and then they went back to the South to spy for the North. Amazing. World War II, the Ghost Army. And I wish I had time to tell you about that. This was an army that was inflatable, and they used the inflatable army to baffle the Germans, to make them think that the troops were moving in this position when the troops were really moving in over here. It kept the Germans distracted. Amazing, amazing. They had sounds like the tanks moving in and sounds of men hollering instructions to their men. They hung up clotheslines with clothes to dry, set up fires, and there were no soldiers present. It was other people that were fooling the Germans, but it worked incredibly. Then the last one in this book is the Navajo Code Talkers. Those guys were so amazing. You will want to read about them. Then the next one in print is Famous Women in History. I've had a lot of people saying, girls and boys love all these books, but I've had some moms say, can we write a book for girls about some famous women? So we did that. We've got Sybil Luddington, a brave messenger, Abigail Adams, Deborah Sampson, the soldier with a secret, Dolly Madison, saving George Washington, Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp, Kate Shelley, the girl who saved a train single-handedly, Annie Oakley, Little Sure Shot, Clara Barton, the angel of the battlefield, Amelia Earhart, Lady Aviator, and Helen Keller, the overcomer. Again, as with all the others, there's full color pictures. They're very well illustrated to capture your kids' attention. And the last one that's in print for now is Heroes of the War of Independence. When I was writing about the signers of the Declaration, there were so many more people in the War of Independence that I wanted to tell about. We've got Paul Revere, John Peter Gabriel Muhlenberg, the fighting parson. He's the guy who flung his clerical robes apart to show the uniform of a Continental soldier after he preached a sermon. And the men in his congregation followed him outside and became the 22nd Regiment in Virginia. Betsy Ross and how she developed the American flag. John Stark, the hero of Bennington. Mad Anthony Wayne and the Midnight Attack. John Sevier, the Battle of Kings Mountain. Reverend James Caldwell, the fighting chaplain. And I need to tell you about him. He was a reverend. He was a pastor. And when the British came to his area of New Jersey, his wife was in her home feeding her baby or holding her infant child. And one of Bannister Tarleton's men, Bannister Tarleton was known for being very cruel, came up to her window, looked in the window and shot her dead. James Caldwell had been off with the army. They told him what happened. He went home. He found parishioners from his church to care for his children. And then he went back to fight. He was fighting for his family. He was fighting for the safety of his family. His wife had thought nobody will kill a mom in her home, but they did. So he went back, he got back to the battle, and the men were running out of wadding. Wadding was paper that was used to stuff in their guns. They could not shoot their guns without wadding, but they had run out. So he went into his church, he grabbed the Isaac Watts hymnals. Isaac Watts wrote many of our famous hymns. He grabbed armfuls, brought them out to the men, started tearing the pages out, said, guys, use this as wadding. Go fight the British. Give them Watts, boys, give them Watts. And they actually drove the British out of their section of New Jersey. But I mean, the things that they suffered, he couldn't just feel sorry for himself and mourn his wife. He had to protect his children. He had to protect his neighbors. It's amazing what these guys suffered and what they endured. Then there's Nathaniel Green, the fighting Quaker. He's one of my favorites. Emily Geiger, a young girl that made a dangerous ride and saved many lives. And Marquis de Lafayette, he was a Frenchman, a young Frenchman. He was 17 when he came to help us in the War of Independence, just because he loved freedom. He was not paid. He gave up a very profitable position in France to help us, and our country honored him for many years. He actually named one of his children George Washington Lafayette. So you're going to find so many interesting facts in here. There's others to come. Let me tell you first what some of our customers say. These are designed for 5th through 8th graders, but they're enjoyed by all ages. They can be used as readers, like reading books, or they can just be for enjoyment, or they can be used as an extension of your history, language arts, and science curriculum. In the back of each book, again, is a list of corresponding curriculum for the Masterbooks curriculum that these books can be used with. Customers say they're great to read as a standalone or to accompany your history books. They're great for morning basket reading. A lot of moms are doing the morning basket reading. They're great to read as a family in the evening. Dad can just pick them up and read to the family. Young and old will be captivated throughout each story. A few of my kids find history to be a little dry at times, so this book really helped to make history come alive for them. Speaking about the animal heroes, this mom says, I recommend it for any kid grade 3 and up. I had only heard of one of the animals told about in this book, and I'm a history buff. Such a great read. Another mom said, my 3rd grader is enjoying reading this to his siblings. It mixes education with reading practice and comprehension, making learning a pleasure. These are perfect readers for middle grades. They're exciting as well as heartwarming. I have one eager reader and one reluctant reader, and this series is a great fit for both. We are hearing that. As a matter of fact, one mom says, if you have a reluctant reader, I really recommend this series because the books are so engaging, it will make them want to learn to read. Moms say they appreciate that the books encourage bravery and teach about the important historical events at the same time. My 4th grader was able to read and comprehend the stories with no issues. I love that the author added vocabulary words to help the kids learn new words and understand the stories better. This is a wonderful addition to our library. Another mom says, I'm using it along with America's Story to dig deeper into the subjects. About the Spies book, it's a great morning basket edition or to use as a read aloud or standalone. These are fascinating stories that bring history to life from a living history perspective. Each story highlights the courage and character of the hero and teaches history in a way that will stick in your mind when you don't even realize you're learning. For instance, we felt like we were dropped down into Lydia Dare's home as we breathlessly followed her courageous exploits to relay crucial information to General Washington. While it's labeled as a 5th through 8th grade, even my 3rd grader is enjoying reading it by herself. I use these books as a read aloud for my younger kids and readers for my older kids. I appreciate the maps and introductions that explain each war. By the 4th book, my kids could tell me about each war, which I found really impressive. Some of our kids are natural bookworms. Others need a little more encouragement to read. I know a book must be exceptionally interesting if I catch them completely engrossed in the story of their own accord. Our 12-year-old son ate it up the second it arrived in the mail. They tell stories of the kind of lives I want our children to be acquainted with and to aspire to. Recommended highly, especially if you have a hesitant reader. It gives them a compelling reason to read. We add one story into our morning time routine and appreciate the way they teach both history and character. An 11-year-old boy wrote this one. This is one of my favorite books just to sit and read. The stories are so descriptive, I almost feel like I'm there in the battles. It's action-packed and inspiring for readers of all ages. They not only remember the stories, but I find my kids are wanting to share the facts they've learned with others. We definitely look forward to reading all of these books each day. Biographies add an element to history that makes the war stories so much more real. Hearing that a soldier was afraid and prayed in that moment is a point we can connect with and understand. This is a great series. I will be collecting all of them. They're written in such a way that keeps the reader engaged and wanting to learn more. About the scientists and inventors, we do science and history as a read aloud in the younger years, and this book fits right into that category for us. I highly recommend this book as a faith-building and character-growing resource that will not only give wonderful reading practice and expand vocabulary, but also help students appreciate the wonders of design in God's creation and the many ways that have been utilized by those who patiently study science and experiment with inventions. About the series, just got a couple more to tell you. One mom said, I have a hard time finding appropriate reading materials for my bookworm boys ages 9 and 11. They simply devour this series. The appealing cover and pictures caught the attention of my 1st, 5th, and 8th graders. They are certainly keepers, and I plan on purchasing the rest when they are released. Okay, so you guys watch for the release of the next 4. I think Famous Pioneers and Frontiersmen will be out by the end of this month. And after that comes Amazing America's Presidents. Now on this one, I picked presidents that were Christians to tell you about. And just briefly, let me tell you, they may be presidents that you didn't know a whole lot about when you went to school because they were Christians. Dwight Eisenhower was a Christian. When he was a boy, he grew up on a farm in Kansas. He hurt his leg one day and it got infected. The doctor came. Back then, there were no antibiotics. The doctor finally said, look, there's nothing I can do except amputate his leg. His parents let Dwight make that decision. He said, absolutely not. He said, I will trust in my God. And if my God takes me home to heaven, so be it. He made his older brother, promise to sit by his bed and not let the doctor take off his leg. Just a couple days later, his leg started improving and he got better because he placed his trust in the Lord. Later, when he was the supreme commander of the Allied forces and was planning the D-Day launch, he was faced with a similar decision, but it wasn't just his leg that was in danger. It was the lives of thousands of men. And he took a walk down a long country road and he prayed to his God for confirmation of how he should make this decision. The weather had gotten really bad, but there was a little break in the weather for a day or two where he thought he could pull it off. If he couldn't, he thought this whole mission's going to be lost. He was trying to liberate France from the Germans. He took a walk, he talked with his God and Savior, and he decided to make that decision, and France was liberated. But it is so amazing to hear presidents that relied on God. There was another president, I won't tell you who, got to get the book, who actually held evangelistic meetings when he was in the White House. It's incredible. So I just wanted to pull the Christian emphasis out for your kids because it's something we just don't hear today. Okay, Jennifer, can you join us back and tell people how they can order these books?
I'm so thankful that you took the time to go through each one of those different curricula and explain what they do, how they're different, and how it's helping other families. Because I know we have a lot of new homeschool moms on this particular summit, and they'll be watching it for years to come, possibly. How wonderful to hear about it from the author. Thank you both, you and your husband both, for writing and having such a passion to make sure that the children of this generation, the coming generations, actually have the truth about our history. And I love that you brought out the fact that forefathers, they didn't do everything right. And we don't know every detail of their lives, but we do know what was written, and you've researched that, and you're giving us unedited history as it has been written. And I'm so thankful that you looked into like what their statements were about Jesus Christ. And so that goes on in print. That's outstanding.
It was amazing. I didn't realize we had such a Christian emphasis. Even the inventors in our American inventors, most of them were born again Christian men. It's just incredibly crazy. It's wonderful.
It is wonderful. And I pray that the Lord will just take this information and bring more light on it, more people to know about it, because we know it's important to study our history because history will repeat itself. And the Bible tells us if we're doing it His way, it's going to repeat itself in a really good way.
Yeah, that's true. And it almost seems like these books make it easy for the parent because the kids want to read them and the kids are learning without the parent having to say, sit down, read this page. It's they're learning because they want to.
Right. Well, you've done an excellent job. You're a great teacher. You're very experienced homeschool mom yourself. So we're just really thankful that we got to partner with you on these resources. And we're thankful to all of you for being here, a part of this summit. All of those things that she's been reading to you about and talking to you about are at masterbooks.com. If you go to homeschool and then subject and look for history, you'll find all of them there. You can explore them more. And as I've said several times throughout this summit, you will find great wisdom if you go to the Moms of Masterbooks Facebook group, as well as the Masterbooks app, and ask your questions about these specific courses. If you want more information, that's where to go. We've got staff members, we've got veteran homeschool moms there, ready to answer your questions from their own personal experience. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Marilyn, for being a part of Masterbooks.
You are so welcome. And let me just add one thing. I know some moms have said their kids like audiobooks, and I believe Masterbooks is turning all of these What a Character series into audiobooks as well.
I'm thrilled about that. That's going to be very handy. All right. Thank you, guys. We'll see you at the next talk.